Okay, away we go. Happy to see you all. There's
Hi, Venerable.
there's Lizzie in Australia. There's Justin in Australia. He's called User. That's my nephew right there. You ever might have met him, Lizzie. He's been in a movie. Justin should tell you the movie he was in. Look at your hair. It is brown. I can't believe it, Lizzie. She's just got
This was an
bright.
accident.
She's got bright red hair normally.
I met Justin in Bendigo.
Oh, you did? Oh, there
Yeah.
you go. I'm happy. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Covita's there in Texas. Good. There's Betty in Santa
Say hi.
Cruz.
Hi, Robina.
There's Alexandra.
Robina, this is Philippe. Do you know Philippe?
Where's Philippe?
Yeah,
Where?
waiting at you right now.
In my window, Wendy's window.
Oh, hello there. What are you doing in New York?
Actually, we're in California right now.
Oh, okay then. Very good. I'm happy to see you. Good.
Good to see you.
Yes. All
May
right,
the force be
everybody.
with you.
Good. Yes. Okay, everyone. So what's the story?
All right.
What should we do, Mayor? Do our little thing as usual?
Yes, I'll share my screen so people can
All right.
see.
And we'll do our little meditation again later. We'll see how we go. Okay, everybody. So we first set ourselves in the right direction. So, as all the Tibetans would say, we state our motivation. We set our motivation. What we would say, I'd say in our culture, is we'd state our purpose. We'd state our goal. What are we doing here together? Why are we here? So we're going to be talking, continuing on from yesterday, but it's always a new day too, about it's broadly about behavior, but particularly about speech, which is what we discussed, but the general idea of this, of behavior, and to see how it links to our lives and see how it's a fundamental part of our practice as Buddhists, So we're going to listen to these teachings, think about the meaning so that we can take tools from it, which is the point. It's got to be practical. Take tools from it to help us develop our amazing potential so that we can be a benefit to others. This is the whole point. So our little prayer here, the second two lines express that altruistic motivation, and the first two lines are expressing, it's kind of for those of us who already identify with being Buddhists, it's reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog Sangye charang soke chognam la changcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog. All right. So, if we just say pluck out this phrase, the importance of speech, the power of speech. It sounds kind of peculiar, it doesn't fit in our psychological models at all. It doesn't fit in our world. We don't really pay much attention. We know, like I said yesterday, we know our speech is important. We know we have to use it every day to communicate. And we know that if people don't believe us, or people don't like our voice, or people don't trust our words, we know we can do nothing. But we don't think of it as a practice. We don't think of it as part of spiritual practice. It sounds kind of interesting, but it's a really powerful idea in Buddhism. It's very interesting. And so, of course, the framework for it is this first level of practice. If we take that classic packaging of the Buddha's teachings, first articulated by Atisha in the 11th century, he took all of Buddha's teachings, and what he did was he kind of presented them all in a very orderly way. This body of knowledge, this plucking out of the vast body of knowledge of Buddhist philosophy, psychology, metaphysics, epistemology, the whole lot, and he presented in a very down-to-earth, practical, psychological way the different stages of all that body of knowledge in terms of being practice, of how to internalize it, which of course is the point, we get this so clearly with our certain bodies of knowledge in the West. We know if you study math, you can't just leave it in your head. You have to apply it. If you study botany, you have to grow a garden. If you study cooking, you have to make a cake. If you study musical theory, you have to play the piano. But we just don't quite get that with spiritual knowledge, and certainly not with philosophical. Especially in our culture, philosophical knowledge, we absolutely leave it in our head. I mean, that whole kind of approach of just having your head full of interesting ideas, but you don't apply them, you know. That's the most, we don't think like that in our culture. Well, the point of being a Buddhist is to internalize the Buddha's views about reality, you know, which we've made a decision to take on board in our own life. We've made that decision, not to blindly believe it, but to take it as our working hypothesis. And the whole point is, Buddha's saying that by, you know, what he has found from his own experience, as we know, he's not a creator. He doesn't make all this stuff up. He's not speculating. I mean, you know, he's not, it's not like that at all. He's, from his own experience, he has found various things to be so. So the key point that Buddha's making, the essential point that Buddha's making, that's across the board in his teachings from A to Z, is that what goes on in our mind determines our happiness and suffering. And what goes on in our mind, the other point, to the extent to which what goes on in our mind is not in touch with reality, is the extent to which we suffer. This is a really interesting concept, you know. So the heart job of being a Buddhist, you know, in terms of this packaging, this lam rim, as Tsongkhapa in the 14th century calls it, but based upon these teachings of Atisha, this presentation of the teachings at the first level, known as the teachings suitable for those with the least capability, then the middle capability, then the great capability, like that, you know, junior school, high school, university. I use that purposely. It's a cliche, but it's immediately obvious to us. It's immediately applicable. We get the point, you know. So where we become a Buddhist, where we actually apply this very unique approach of the Buddhas, which is about the mind and how it functions. I mean, the body of knowledge about the mind in Buddhism is vast, coming from these amazing Indians before him, who are the ones, as I always continue to quote, as His Holiness said, were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. So Buddha went as far as he could go in that body of knowledge and then diverge in his own direction, directly, in particular, in relation to his own experiential knowledge about the nature of self. So that's where the heart job, to be your own therapist. That's where meditation comes in. This is what people sort of vaguely know about a Buddhist. You do something called meditation. It's something about the mind. It's absolutely right. It is. But the Buddhist point is this. Entry-level junior school, grade 1, as I like to put it, is nothing to do with the mind yet. The Buddha's basically saying, given that we've got body, speech, and mind, and we know this intellectually, but we don't use that way of describing in our culture. Why? As I said yesterday, is because we have this very intense grasping at this big lump of me, this big solid, partless lump of me plodding through life. We're not very articulate about the components of me and their function. So Buddha really lays this out, and we can see it. It's so evidently true, you know. So the first stages of practice are basically Buddha exhorting us to control our behavior. Like I like to put it, controlling the servants of our mind. But we don't even think that way. But the more we use Buddha's view, the more we'll see that whatever our body and speech do, it's driven by what's in the mind. I mean, we sort of know it. If you see a person walking down the street who's lost the plot, and they're chatting to themselves and doing weird actions with their body and saying weird words with their mind, with their speech, we know their mind's out of control. We kind of get it. Well, that's what Buddha's saying all the time. I mean, if we had a movie, a silent movie of one day of ourself, what we'd see, if we didn't know the meaning of all the things that we were doing or saying, they would be the actions of an insane person. But what the Buddha's saying is what we normally do and say, driven, because we're born with this, due to past intense habit, we're born with these instinctive actions of body and speech that are expressions of what's happening in our mind. But like I said yesterday, we're so disconnected from what's going on in our mind, and there's no sense of connection for ourselves and our own awareness between what we say and do and what we think, because we don't pay attention to what we think. I mean, you know, not only do we not know what goes on in our mind, but the way Lama Zopa says it, and this is pretty shocking, the vast majority of all humans on this planet have no idea that what goes on in our mind, that it plays, we have no idea that it plays any role at all in our lives. We don't realize it plays out any role whatsoever. We think our mind is this secret kind of little cave in there, that as long as no one else sees it and hears it, it's okay. We're allowed to think what we like. Our mind is completely uncontrolled. We know that. So we don't think it matters. Matters means we don't think it has consequences. Cause and effect, you know. We have no idea our mind. And absolutely with our body and speech, we have no sense either. So there we are on the one hand, identifying this lump of me, this person, and we think this is me. That means the unified grouping of the body, the speech, and the mind, this person who plods through life. We've got this vague sense of ourself, but there's a really powerful disconnect, first of all, between what goes on in our mind and and our body and speech. But second, there's this massive disconnect between... What's that? What happened? Oh, it's okay. There's a massive disconnect in our mind between just the way we appear to others. And this is something that's really more to do with...
Venerable, you're muted.
Huh?
For some reason.
Okay. Okay. So we're not, in other words, we're self-conscious in a neurotic way. What happened?
You're still
I'm
muted,
muted.
Venerable.
Oh, what happened? Okay. I'm sorry. How much did you miss? 1 minute? 20 minutes?
Maybe a minute, yeah.
A minute. Okay, good. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So we're not conscious of what's happening in our mind at all. We don't know, and we're often not conscious of what's in our mind until it manifests in our behavior, and then we wonder what the hell's going on. And we're absolutely not conscious of the function of our body and speech in relation to its impact upon others. Okay, so the hard practice of being a Buddhist is being your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe likes to put it. Knowing your own mind intimately, precisely and clearly and well, using the Buddhist model, understanding the way the Buddha divides all the contents of our mind into the neurotic states of mind and the valid states of mind. You know, simply speaking, those that are the source of our pain and suffering, and those that and the cause and the source of the actions we do with our body and speech, which are actions that are negative that harm others, and then those that are valid, virtuous, appropriate, beneficial, useful states of mind, love, compassion, intelligence, kindness, self-respect, whatever you like, which are the source of our own happiness, and then the source of the actions we do that are useful to others. So it's a really clear, seemingly simplistic breaking down, actually. It's not how we think in modern psychology at all. We make it so much more complicated. So, and that's where we really become to apply Buddha's unique approach to life, which is his view of the mind. But now the first level of practice is absolutely fundamental. I mean, we become Buddhists, we all know this. We take refuge, we take the lay vows, blah, blah, blah. We first, the very first level, entry level, junior school, grade 1, as we said yesterday, is Buddha's got his little checklist of 10 don'ts. The first 3 of which are about the body, and the next 4 are about the speech. The last 3 are the beginnings of working on our mind. Just the beginnings. So this whole level of practice, this wisdom wing, junior school and high school, which is all the teachings of the Theravadan path, the teachings of the Hinayana, whatever you want to call them. And they're all the teachings that are enabling ourselves, to harness our crazy energy, to harness the uncontrolled body, speech, and mind, to discipline our body, speech, and mind. Now, why would we want to do that? And this is a really important question. We should ask why. I mean, Jesus says, don't kill, don't lie, don't jump on the wrong person, just like Buddha, and just like your good grandmother would, or a decent communist. It's a universal view of good ethics, basically. But there's a crucial point here that I think is always important to point out, and we don't often think this through as Buddhists. We've come from our Christian culture, our Jewish culture, we've come from our materialist culture of our good grandmother, whatever it is, and they all speak the same way. Behave nicely, Robina. Don't do this. Don't harm others. Don't steal. Don't lie. So what's important is we should ask the question, why not? Is it really appropriate? Don't just blindly do what someone tells you. Be a grown-up, There should be some logic to the instructions. If your doctor gives you some instructions, don't do this, you should ask why, and she should tell you why. Give you the logic of why you shouldn't eat sugar. Give you the logic of why you shouldn't drink coffee or whatever. So the same here. So if you ask Jesus, and this is a really important point that I always point out, because it's something so deeply ingrained in us, this assumption that we've brought from the dualistic view of the creative religions, or indeed the materialist ones. We don't question it, but we really must if we like the Buddha's view, we want to apply the Buddha's view. So when we ask Jesus, why not kill? Why shouldn't I kill? Why shouldn't I cheat on my partner? And we know his answer, and I've got this from our Jesuit priest friend, I'm quoting, because God said. This is a profoundly important point. And that's the usual assumption we have, that morality and ethics is a bunch of information squashed down on top of us from outside, from above. That's why we resist it. That's why we get neurotic and guilty. And that's deeply ingrained in us, that view. Don't blame your Jewish mother or your Catholic mother. That's a deeply ingrained instinct, and it's a function of ego grasping, the root delusion. This schizophrenic, as Lama Yeshe would put it, dualistic view that goodness and badness is something that's mandated from the outside. And what that's related to is the sense of punishment and reward. This is deep in our bones. So Jesus says, that a sin is doing an action that God said you shouldn't do. And that's appropriate if there is a creator, and if you posit a creator, and if you have faith in a creator, because we know a creator is a person who runs a universe, who creates the universe, who is the boss, who created me, the laws. It's appropriate. It's appropriate. It's like in my mother's household. She is the boss. When she says, don't do that, and I'm a smarty pants and say, why not? We know her answer. It's the same as Jesus. Same as God, because I say so. That's okay. That's her right. She runs the house. I have to obey her rules. Well, God made the universe, so I must obey his rules. This is a powerful point. So the reason not to kill, the main reason not to kill for Jesus is because God said. The same with all the creator religions. And that's fine if you posit a creator, but it is not Buddha's view. Nothing to do with it. There are certain rules within the Buddhist community, and they're coming from the Buddha, like he's set up a set of, if you're living together, you do this and you do that. That's reasonable. But we're talking about the fundamental things that are called, for the Buddha, that are called natural law. And even this Jesuit priest, my friend, said there is some aspect of natural law, but the main function, the main purpose behind the main thing that defines a sin, a negative action, is because God said. And that's fine, but that is not the Buddha's reason. So you should ask the Buddha, why shouldn't I kill? Why not, Buddha? Well, there are 2 points here. Why should I not badmouth people behind their backs? There are 2 points here. The first general point for the Buddha, as opposed to the Christians' view that a negative action is one that God says not to do, a negative action for the Buddha, like such as not killing, not stealing, not bad-mouthing behind backs, it's an action that harms another. Now, and that for the Buddha is natural law. There's no equivalent in this sense of Buddha's law. There's no such thing, because he ain't a creator. He doesn't posit a creator. Therefore, he's not a punisher or a rewarder. There's no punishment and no reward. It's a natural law, just like, so the first point is it's a negative action in this heaviest level, which is the basis of Buddha's exhorting us not to kill, lie, steal. Those level of actions are the heaviest ones because they harm others. They're not the only negative ones, because this is the deeper point. Every negative action for the Buddha, finally, and this is the point even with killing, is an action that harms us. This is something we really do not really think about deeply. I said this yesterday. We mainly are so full of guilt and want to be good girls and boys. We will do it because mummy said, because we want to be praised. We'll do it because God said, because we want to go to heaven. I mean, I'm not complaining. Good enough. I'm happy to make your mother happy and be praised by mummy. But this is coming, what we discussed yesterday. Remember, the deepest attachment we have, and this is triggering to this one. This triggers this one. The deepest attachment we have in the depth of our being, the hardest to see. Way more intense and more profound and more pervasive than the attachment to sex, drugs, and rock and roll is attachment to being seen as a nice person, attachment to being liked, attachment to being approved of. It's the deepest attachment that pervades our minds and underpins most of our actions. This sounds pretty shocking to us. We mightn't even realize we have it. And that's related to this view of, being punished and rewarded. So we'll be good girls because we want to not be punished, and we'll be good girls because we want to be rewarded. But the fundamental point for the Buddha, it's more subtle, more nuanced, more grounded, is that it's a good action, an action that's virtuous. And let's today talk about this, go to more detail. An action that's virtuous is one that's driven by a positive motivation and is an action that will be of benefit to others. But in this first level, to really become conscious, it's an action that will program your mind with virtuous seeds that will produce your happiness in the future. So the most fundamental law for the Buddha, the law that runs the universe, the law within which the universe runs, is primordial, is fundamental. He didn't make it up. He's not speculating. It didn't come from on high. It's not from revelation. He has observed it with his own mind. And he says every one of us can. So, of course, you've got to get single point of concentration and get shamatha and all of this to start accessing your subtle level of mind. That's for sure. But this is fundamental point at the starting point. That everything we think and do and say, the Buddha says, everything we think and do and say, every microsecond of what we think and do and say, just naturally programs us into the person we become. So if we the habit of uncontrolled body, uncontrolled speech, driven by attachment, driven by anger, driven by fear, driven by depression, driven by jealousy. Join the universe here, folks. Don't be guilty. This is what causes us pain and suffering. Right now causes us suffering and then programs us to become an even more suffering person. It's the cause of suffering. Not punishment, not reward. It's a natural law. No one runs it. No one made it up. So the first level of a negative action, the heaviest ones, are those that all not just harm me, but also harm others. So they're the ones we first refrain from. And why should I? Because guess what, folks? I am sick of suffering. That's the reason that should motivate us at this first level. Of course, we're on the Mahayana path, so we plug in bodhicitta, but we've got to get this powerful sense of renunciation first. Renunciation, it sounds like forbidding, like giving up something. Yeah, giving up suffering and its causes, which is my uncontrolled body and uncontrolled speech carrying out the wishes of my uncontrolled, crazy, poor mind. So you've first got to control your body and speech. You don't wait till that you've perfected that before you start meditating. Of course not. You can do them all together. But there's no way in the universe. If you've got uncontrolled speech, like in my life, like I said yesterday, I mightn't have punched too many people, I'd probably kicked and screamed, but I had a really quick mouth. And if my attachment didn't get what it wanted, it came out the mouth. You know, anger, harming others, abuse, shouting. Maybe I didn't talk much behind backs. It was direct, you know. That's called harming others. It's called abusing people. That's not cool. Uncontrolled speech. So that's got to harm me. So it's an action that harms another, but it will harm me. Then I can start to extrapolate from that when I start to understand this view that Buddha is saying, that what I do with my speech and my body, which impact upon others, are called negative actions if they're driven by a delusion which harm others. Then I'm going to start to realize, well, that harms me, and I've got to realize I don't want the suffering. We've got to realize I'm sick of the suffering. Got to realize that. And this is where accountability comes. It's, you know, if you take the law of karma, it means you're accountable. You are the one who created yourself. As Dalai Lama says, it's like self-creation. This is a heavy one for us to get to, but it is profound when we can take it on, because we begin to grow up. Then I can start to extrapolate. Wow, that's interesting. If what I do with my body when I shout at other people causes me suffering, then what if I eat 7 pieces of cake all at once or jump on 14 boys a day? You know, even if they say yes to me, I'm not harming them. Then I should start controlling that as well. So you start to learn that you have to harness your body and speech. And it's a stupendously difficult job, you know. Especially when you got, you know, like we said yesterday, some people don't have speech that's out of control. How marvelous. Some people even have to speak up for themselves. That's a different discussion. But the general discussion here is, at this first level of practice, the impact first upon ourselves. The consequences first for ourselves. Understanding the law of karma. Not blame, not punishment, not reward. It's a natural law. No one runs it. No one's watching us. No one's going to catch us. We are the boss. We run the show. We have to learn that. So from this comes incredible accountability. Grown up. We become grown up, you know. We start taking responsibility because we realize, like eating sugar will cause me diabetes, then me shooting my mouth off or being uncontrolled will harm me. Same logic, same logic, same logic. So this is where in the first level of practice, the powerful way to really accomplish some progress within ourselves of harnessing our body and speech is to do when you've formalized you're becoming a Buddhist and you take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you formalize it in front of somebody who becomes one of your teachers. There's great benefit that comes from that. But then you're qualified now to take what they call the 5 layperson's vows. So vows too, as soon as we hear the word vow, we have a panic attack, you know. Like again, someone's trying to squash us. But actually, think about it. If you have to learn to play the piano, you have to learn whatever your job is, whatever, like you're a gardener. Basically, the instructions you get of what seed to plant and how much water to give it and how much sunlight and where you put it in the garden, it's a series of commitments and vows. You have to obey those. If you have to drive a car and you wrote down the various instructions in order to drive a car, you'd probably have 100, and they're all called vows and they're called commitments. A commitment in Buddhism is a decision to do something, and a vow is a decision to refrain from something. So if I have to sit down and pass my driving test, or I have to learn and just drive the car, I have to internalize probably 50 to 100 vows. I will not put the foot on the brake at the same time as the accelerator. I will not turn left if I want to go right. I will not go more than 70 miles an hour. I mean, I will not do. We don't call them vows though, do we? We just say, oh, I have to learn how to drive. We feel proud of ourselves from learning it all. Well, as soon as we hear a thing called spiritual, and it's a vow, we have a panic attack, like someone's squashing us. Well, it's ridiculous. It's like infantile. A vow is a powerful decision that you make, that I will not kill. And why don't you want to kill? Because you know what, honey, I am sick of suffering. I don't want to imprint my mind with the habit to kill. I don't want to get killed in the future. I don't want to be born in a horrible rebirth. I don't want to have a horrible environment. I don't want to have people harm me or get sick. These are all of which are the consequences of killing for the Buddha in his logical law of the law of cause and effect. I have to know I don't want that. I don't want to get killed on the freeway, so I'm not going to go more than 100 miles an hour, whatever. You have to first have that one, then you can have compassion as well after that. You've got to have this genuine understanding. I do not want to touch sugar. Look at the laws when it comes to nutrition now. Look at the nutritional value on food. I mean, if you've got a child who can't eat peanuts, you are like this rigorous, insane maniac checking every single piece of food to make sure that there's nothing in there that is going to hurt your child. You of course you're going to do that. You'd be so rigorous, so disciplined. You'd never just take it for granted. That's the kind of, as a good analogy for how we would use vows in our own life, you know. And the point is this, Buddha loves his vows. There's 3 sets of vows in the entire path to enlightenment, according to the 3 levels of practice. The first level, called them vows of individual liberation. These are the vows in this junior school, high school level, the wisdom wing, that enable you to harness your body, speech and mind so that you can give up attachment and you can give up delusions and you can give up harming others so that you can realize emptiness, so that you can get the hell out of samsara. It's completely for your sake. You're the beneficiary of the first level of practice, completely. The purpose behind all the first level of practice, junior school and high school, the vow, the lay vows or the nuns and monks vows or whatever, are to protect you from future suffering. It's like mental health. When you go to your nutritionist, you learn exactly what food you should and should not eat. And then guess what? The consequence, you get a decent body. Well, here we're talking about a decent person. You become a person you want to become. So the vows are incredible. So for the Buddha, there's the Pratimoksha vows, individual liberation. Then you've got the Bodhisattva vows, which are outrageous and more profound, and they are for the sake of others. Then you have the Tantric vows, the postgraduate level, the most advanced level. And they're all these rules that you learn, like you learn the driving rules and the gardening rules and the cake making rules to enable you to make the cake, drive the car, become a Buddha. Same logic. Don't hear it as someone squashing you, which is how we do, because we have this neurotic guilt, which is our own criticism of ourselves, thinking we're going to be punished by others. I mean, these are ingrained in our minds, these misconceptions. They do not belong in Buddhism at all. He doesn't talk about this view. So for the Buddha, these vows are so potent that, they say in some of the level of the teachings that they're like vows are a subtle physical energy that is visible to clairvoyance. And Lama Zopa has said something like this. This is the power of vows. He said, you have a person who's doing bucket loads of practice all day. He doesn't say bucket loads. Lots of spiritual practice, but doesn't have a vow, even just say not to kill. Whereas you have another person who's merely keeping their vows purely, not killing, not stealing, not lying, whatever, and doing not much more practice. The second person, because of the potency of vows, this is Buddha's teaching, because of the power of vows, 24 hours a day that you're living in those vows, even when it's not conscious, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds and putting atomic bombs on those tendencies to lie, tendencies to steal, tendencies to kill, and you're purifying past karma. So it's like a no-brainer. Lama Zopa says just being good is not enough. So in order to really understand this, we have to understand the logic of how we create karma. How we do actions. Let's unpack this. So like I'm saying, the Buddha's view, his own observation, is that every millisecond of what we think and do and say sows seeds in the mind. Nothing goes astray. They're all stored there. Nothing goes astray. That will ripen in the future unless you do something with them. Unless you pull those seeds out, or unless you know, or do something else with them. They will grow, they will ripen just naturally, and they'll ripen in four ways in the future: as a type of rebirth, as a tendency to keep doing it, as a thing like that happening to you, and as an environmental result. So the 4 results of non-killing, intentional, conscious non-killing, would be to have a human rebirth, number 1. Number 2, to wake up with a tendency to not kill. 3, have no one kill you or harm you. And 4, the physical environment would nourish you and not harm you. We create all of this, Buddha says. Of course, initially it's pretty abstract, it's pretty cosmic, but it's all able to be explained. So, okay. So without a vow not to kill, okay, this is what we have to understand how karma is created. So the very first, the thing is this, there's many parts to our mind, many different mental factors, as they say in Buddhist psychology, or states of mind, as we would say. And there are so many of them, and we need to learn these as we get to more advanced. We have to learn to know the components of our mind so we can learn to harness it and understand it and be in control of our mind. So there are several states of mind that are neither virtuous nor non-virtuous in their character. They call them neutral, but that misleads us, thinking they're not important. I like to call them the mechanics of our mind, without which you would not function. And there are several, for example, that are there all the time. And one of those is called intention. Intention is volition, not good motivation, but I will. It's the most bare bone state of mind. It's there every millisecond, and this literally runs the show. The real meaning of the word karma, which is action in Sanskrit, the real meaning of the word karma is mental action, intention, volition, I will. And that's there every millisecond. Of course, 99.9% of them we are not conscious of. Absolutely, we're not conscious, because we're totally programmed. We're virtually instinctively intending to do things. In other words, you don't think when you're good at piano, you don't think you're intending to play those notes, but you are. But you program yourself to perfection. It's now effortless and it's virtually instinctive. But intention is there every second. But you've perfected it. Well, that we get born, we come into this life perfected in our intentions. So, we're going to see from little children. Some little children will steal automatically. We don't like to think they are. We think they're all pure from the beginning. That's nonsense, Buddha says, You come programmed with your intentions, with your tendencies from before. So intention drives the show. It's there every second. So what we're trying to do here, so intention is the meaning of karma. And then from that, everything flows. You first have to have the thought, I want a piece of cake. Then your body will stand, your legs will stand up, your eyes will look in that direction, your hand will go, open the door and look for it. And all your mind's running every second. And you'll get the cake and you put it in the mouth. This is obvious. But we don't notice it. We don't even realize we did that because we're so instinctive. We're not conscious of what we're doing. So intention is the first one. So intention, then let's say, you want to, you're sitting here right now, and this is the point about vows, why vows are so powerful. Right this second, we're probably not killing anything. The happy mice and cockroaches are in the kitchen having fun, and we're leaving them in peace. So we're not killing them. But if we don't have the thought, intention, I will not kill that cockroach. Until we have that thought, I will not kill that cockroach, you are creating no virtuous karma of non-killing. So the point here is very clear. To get another human life, if we take the view of Buddhism that when we die, our mind will be reincarnated, well, natural, because it's beginningless and endless as far as the Mahayana views is concerned. So our mind will take another rebirth based upon how we've programmed our mind with our actions. We're not conscious of this. So the life we've got now, a human life, with reasonable conditions that we've got now, first we think we got it from God, or we think it's just good luck, or we got it from mummy and daddy. Aren't we lucky, or aren't we unlucky, whichever. But no, if we understood how many karmic seeds we must have planted very consciously, and as Lama Zopa says, within the framework of having lived in vows of morality, within the framework of having lived in vows of ethics, because that's what makes every action of virtue so potent. So right now, without a vow, it's only when I meet the cockroach and I say to myself, I will not kill that cockroach. It's only then I drop a seed of non-killing into my bank vault. And when I die, I need bucket loads of these seeds, rich, intentional, delicious programming of non-killing. But unless you're living in India, like in the, it's like at the Jurassic Park in the rainy season. You go to Bodh Gaya in the summer and dusk comes, it's like a carpet of creatures. You've got to be conscious every second not to kill creatures. So your mind has to be involved. The mind is what creates karma. You're conscious, and that's why we have to become conscious. We have to become intentional people. So non-killing is a super powerful virtuous action. So we need to create as many of those seeds as possible. Well, you're not going to meet that many cockroaches. I mean, I'm living here in Santa Fe in New Mexico, and I meet a half a dozen ants a day. I mean, there's a couple of birds outside. I don't want to disturb them. I haven't met a rat or a cockroach or a mouse yet. There's no thought, and I haven't met any enemies and rapists coming in the door, so I don't have to cultivate any view. I will not kill them. So we think, aren't I a lucky person? But I'm resting on my laurels. And why I've got a good environment now where no one's threatening me is because of my past non-killing. So I've got to keep creating more non-killing, conscious, intentional non-killing. Well, it's hard work without vows. Whereas if I live in a vow to not kill, because it's so potent for the Buddha, 24 hours a day, I'm keeping that vow of not killing, even unconsciously. 24 hours a day, I'm putting atomic bombs onto the tendency to kill and on my past killing karma and creating bucket loads of virtuous karmic seeds. I mean, these are the words, So it's like an easy peasy, falling off a log, easy way to create merit. We are demented not to live in vows. It protects our minds. It hugely protects our minds and makes it easy to cultivate. It kind of it's like putting atomic bombs under the weeds in your garden so you've got space to grow the flowers. This is the way they talk. I mean, so for me, the only reason I'm walking around these 14th century robes with a bald head, okay, it's cheap and easy way to live, I'm quite content, is because of the power of vows. I think it's so delicious, And it protects our mind. And as Amazoba says, this life we've got right now, that we take for granted and think, aren't I lucky? No, you worked so damned hard, you can't believe it. And you did it within the context of living in vows, Rinpoche says. It's just not enough just to be a good person. And so why we even want a spiritual path is for this reason as well, So vows are stupendous, marvelous things to have, Like I said, the Buddha says there's subtle physical energy, visible to clairvoyance, this commitment you make, this decision you make, that you will not kill, not steal, not lie. It's got powerful meaning. Don't think of it as some external, self-existent thing that someone's squashing you to do, Not at all. Mm-hmm. Not like that.
Are you a good boy?
So, let's look a bit more then at this, at the way we create actions.
Venerable Robina, you're muted again.
I'm not. What happened? Someone's muting me. Oh, because you're muting other people, so you mute me as well. So you're muting other people, so I get muted too. Okay. So, let's look at the process of creating karma, and which is all to do with our behavior, all to do with body and speech, okay? So, if every millisecond of what we think and do and say sows seeds in the mind, programs our mind. We are producing the person we become, which we kind of get when it comes to maths or music. Every second that you're playing piano programs you into the musician you become. Is completely reliant upon you learning the music and doing it properly. So this is the same here. The person we become is completely reliant upon what we do with our mind and therefore our body and our speech. See, that's why if we stop hearing it as religion, if we stop hearing it as someone telling us not to do something, if we hear it as an intelligent process of producing the beautiful person that you want to become, then you'll get excited to want to live in vows and excited to want to practice ethics. And if we don't understand this, then we don't understand the Buddha's view. This is the thing, Because it's fundamental. It's a starting point. And it pervades the rest of practice. Okay, so everything we think and do and say sows seeds, and there's different ways that our actions ripen. But any action that's called a complete action, which is the one that sows a seed and puts into our main bank vault, which produces a type of rebirth. Let's use the example of non-killing. Then there have to be 4 things in place when you do that action of that conscious action of non-killing. See, non-killing just sounds abstract and passive, doesn't it? Oh, I'm not killing. Aren't I a nice person? No, if your mind's not involved, there's no karma involved at all. There's no karma of non-killing if you're not intending to. That's the point about vows. So, the first thing has to be, in terms of non-killing, there's got to be that mouse in your kitchen. Got to see the animal there, a creature. Got to be a living being, because a living being is the object of the action of non-killing. 2, the mind has to be involved in it, and there's several things there, but I'll just keep it simple. There's 2 main points. One is you have to have the intention, and I mean bare bones volition. I will not, I must not kill that mouse, or I must not harm, like I've got some ants on my counter, okay, so I'll use the ant. I have to see the ant there, then I have to have the thought. I must not harm it, and that will determine what my hand does, doesn't it? The moment I say I must not harm that ant as I'm cleaning my counter, my hand will go around the ant, because my mind decided I will not harm the ant. My hand just does what my mind wants. My hand is my servant, okay? So it's obvious if we think of it this way. So I have to have the intention, I will not harm that ant. So then motivation. Motivation, usually we could say, is probably compassion. You know, I don't want the ant to suffer. I mean, there's attachment there too, but let's just say the virtue is there. I don't want the ant to suffer. And when I see I hurt the ant, you think, oh my gosh, that's awful. So intention is, I will not harm the ant, or I will not kill the ant. And then 2, motivation, compassion. These 2 so totally come together that we don't even discriminate between them. And just the same in a negative action called killing. First is there has to be the ant. Second, let's say you hate ants. And the second you see an ant, 1, there's the intention, I will not kill, and 2, there's a motivation. Attachment to being ant-free. Aversion, basically. Oh, how dare the ant be on my kitchen sink? So they come so totally together, you don't think, first, I have aversion for ants. What'll I do? Well, I think I might kill it. They come so completely together you don't even notice, isn't it? Intention and motivation. The delusion and the intention. But they're completely there, you know. So the same with the virtuous action, like the ant, not wanting to harm it. 3, the action. In my case, I'll get a cloth, or what I'll do, and I'll put it on the cloth and I'll put it outside or whatever, because I've got dinner out there for them, because I can discover that if I give them dinner out there, they won't come in here, because, whatever. That's my attachment. So anyway, I'll release the ant. So 1, there's an object called ant. 2A, intention not to kill. 2B, compassion. 3, the action. 4, happy ant. Thank you, Robina. Bye-bye. That's a complete action of non-killing, right there. And you just flip it over and you have a complete action of killing. So, of course, often we do these actions. We don't even notice. If you're just used to killing ants, because you just know it's normal, your mummy taught you, your mummy kills ants, the world killed ants, we don't think it matters, ants don't have a brain, ants don't suffer, it's good not to have ants, then that's how we've been programmed, then of course we're going to be killing ants all the time, and the mosquitoes, and the cockroaches, and the rest of the creatures, and the mice, and the rats, and the ex-husbands, whatever. That's how we are. So if you become conscious, you make the decision to change. Well, that's a complete action of non-killing. And that seed drops into my main bank vault. And then every time, and that increases. It will grow. It's dynamic. Seeds don't stay static. They multiply and get masses of fruits. Well, the fruits of a complete action of non-killing is another decent human rebirth. It has to multiply. So we need bucket loads of those seeds. If we just want to get another human body, bare minimum, you want lots of those seeds in your mind. See, this is the point here. The way I'm talking here, it sounds like, you're just thinking of yourself, Robina. I thought you had compassion for the ant, but you're only doing it so you can get a virtuous seed in your bank vault. Do not hesitate for that. Do not feel ashamed of that. You have to be delighted every time you don't eat sugar, because you know you don't want diabetes. No one criticizes you for being selfish. Well, never think that. You've got to have the understanding that you've got to create bucket loads of good karma for your sake. That's like self-respect. That's not selfish. It's intelligence. Eventually, it goes beyond the I, and it can be purely for compassion. But one step at a time, please. So we need lots of those seeds in our mind, just to get another human body. So the way non-killing is going to ripen in 4 ways. The main way non-killing would ripen is like a decent rebirth, like say a human one. 2, it'll ripen in the second way as a tendency not to kill, because you've programmed your mind not to kill. Pretty logical. 3, it'll ripen as an experience similar to the cause of, in this case, non-killing, and it will ripen as you in relation to others not getting killed and not dying young. Look at the world, Look, here we are right now, still alive. But we can see other people who died in the womb, who died when they're 2, who died when they're 5, who got murdered, who died, just died, dropped dead at 17 with a heart attack. That's the result of killing. If you're still alive and no one's killing you yet and no one's harming you, that's the result. That's your killing, your virtuous non-killing karmic petrol tank hasn't run out yet, basically. And 4, non-killing would ripen environmentally, where the physical world itself doesn't harm you. Now look at COVID-19 right now. There's 2 kinds of karma here that is manifesting with COVID-19. One, and it's collective, the entire universe. Look at it. One is the experience similar to the cause of past killing is if you die young, get sick and die young, or get killed. Well, getting sick and dying young is what's happening to millions of people on the planet, or thousands, isn't it? Depends on what country you're in, People are dying of COVID-19. Babies are dying. Even now they just said an animal was tested positive for COVID-19. So dying young, getting sick and dying young is the result of killing. Being killed by others is the result of killing, past killing in a past life. So any one of us who haven't yet caught COVID-19, we've still got non-killing karma in our petrol tank. That's why we're not getting sick. But the other way that COVID-19 is manifesting is environmental karma. So that means the physical world itself will harm you. Well, for us, it's not, when you die young, that's your direct karma of the experience similar to the cause of past killing. But environmentally, if you meet, your next door neighbor, she has COVID-19 and you shake hands with her and then you get sick, she is the environment for you effectively. The environment includes all the people you live with. The food you eat, the weather, the water, the ground, and even the people and the animals who live in that world. That's your environment. So then if you get harmed by another due to the environment, that's your environmental karma of killing, that the physical world harms you. So look at the moment. The whole world is experiencing this. It's unbelievable. It's the result of killing. Sickness is a result of killing, and the physical environment being harmful to us is a result of killing. We're not even allowed to touch each other, and we've got to wear masks. We're not even allowed to touch each other. I mean, that's like in Queensland, they have these things called cane toads. When some people brought in these creatures for some reason to help the sugar industry, but they're these disgusting creatures who are so repulsive that people run over them and delight and happy. Have you met any cane toads, Justin? You can't hear me. Doesn't matter. Forget it. He's in Queensland right now. So anyway, and so the animals who eat cane toads die an agonizing death. That's us now with each other. Humans are like cane toads to us. That's environmental karma of past killing. It's very interesting. So, in junior school then, the very first level, if you decide to like to become a Buddhist, you say, well, what should I do, Buddha? He says, well, honey, how about trying not to kill, lie, steal, and the 4 of the speech we discussed yesterday, the beginning of them, this is the beginning, there's some of the mind as well. And then if you'd continue and you'd like to commit to being Buddhist, you'd take refuge, you'd formalize your commitment in front of somebody. And that's very powerful. You've looked into the Buddha's teachings, you like the Buddha, you looked at good examples of these teachings, people who seem to practice it, good teachers, and you get enthusiasm and you like them and you want to commit to it. So you commit, you take refuge from somebody. And it's a formal little ceremony where you take a person in front of you whom you've checked up on, whom you decide is a good person, a valid example, and you like to take them on your teachers, and you sit there and you commit to doing this. And what you're doing is that person received this refuge commitments from their teacher, and that person received them from their teacher, and that person received them from their teacher, and you can track this back in an unbroken line of living human beings right back to the Buddha. It's like you're plugging into this power source. I find it very delicious. And then when you've taken refuge, you then can take the 5 layperson's vows. And that too, you track it right back to the Buddha. And this becomes a really profound help for your practice. It enables you to control your body, speech, and mind. It kind of blesses your mind, but it also puts atomic bombs under the old habits, and it makes space for your mind to become more conscious, and it gives you the capacity to control your body and speech. Why? For your benefit. You're the beneficiary. Of course, the rats and roaches will have a party, as Lama Zopa says, because you're going to leave them in peace. But you're the direct beneficiary of this level of practice. Super powerful. And then because like any vow and commitment, If you're vowing not to drive more than 100 miles an hour and vowing not to do the wrong thing on the road, you're driving and you're having a chat to your friend, but because you've internalized all of the road rules and you've internalized the way to drive the car, but it's there all the time, informing how you drive. You're automatically obeying all the rules in your head. You've internalized them. That's how when you learn anything, it's all in there. And this is exactly the same with the vows. They're very present for you and they protect you. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. An incredible aid to your practice, I tell you. As Ever says, just being good is not enough. Why is very logical, because our minds aren't virtuous enough. So even now, without a vow, let's say, I'm trying to save the ant, my compassion is there for sure, but it's mixed with attachment. It's mixed with my own benefit. And so there's not much virtue in the actions we do, but if we do them in the framework of living in vows, vows make them much more powerful. Vows make them much more virtuous. That's the benefit of vows, It helps your practice. It guides you. It protects you. It's very powerful. And they're your decision. You decide to drive the car. You decide to play music. You decide to eat better food. You decide to live in good ethics. For your sake, you've got to know it's that. Not because someone says. Not because someone's squashing you. That's just kind of a childish view, I'll have some questions in a minute. Not yet. I feel like Virginia is saying something. Is it a question from Virginia, Mayor?
Let's see. Yes, Virginia asks, hearing the teaching, I feel like I need to take vows immedially.
Good.
What is my first step to walk this path and make the commitment?
If you've studied a little bit already and you think you're ready to take vows and take refuge, you ask somebody to give it to you. That's the next step. To find someone to give it to you. Find a teacher you like and you request them. That's your next step, honey. Okay. Any more questions? Now we have questions.
Roxy Power asks, if we eat meat, are we breaking our bodhisattva vows and thus creating even more bad karma than had we not taken the vows?
No, I understand. Well, first of all, we're not discussing bodhisattva vows here. Let's just keep to the lay vows. Let's keep to the patimoksha vows. Let's keep to the individual liberation vows, this first level, where you have a vow not to kill. Bodhisattva vows, there's no direct vow not to kill. There are vows, so that's a whole other discussion. So let's look at this, because it's more nuanced than we think. First of all, it's really telling, and we all do the same. Who was asking this question? Who? Mia?
I was. Yeah.
Who was? Oh, Roxy. Okay, Roxy. Good, darling. Thank you. So listen, Roxy, it's already very telling, because this is the common way we all ask the question around the world. We always ask it in terms of whether we not or eat meat. But the broader point has to be, surely the bigger point is, what's the karma I create if I use animal bodies for my benefit? Which implies that the animals had to die first. Do you understand my point, Roxy? That's a bigger point, isn't it? So we look at it that way, it's almost like you almost can't move in life without harming sentient beings. So, this is why I always, so the meat industry, first of all, there's a whole issue at the moment about the meat industry, which is absolutely appropriate. The meat industry is so monstrous, so inappropriate in the way that it dominates the whole earth and it's destroying the planet. So that's an issue that's really quite separate from the other issue we're discussing here, which is this fundamental one of the karma we create each moment. So if we, so for example, we tend to have a view, I don't know all the numbers. I've done no the research. But we tend to have, if we kill an animal and we eat its flesh, that's what's so terrible. But we never consider, and this is all so important for us to think about, we never consider all the animals that die so that we can grow the vegetables. Like in a wheat field, for example, I remember one man in Melbourne quoting one scientist, then one wheat field where they grow the wheat. Obviously the wheat is probably 20% for the meat eaters and 80% for the vegetarians, let's say. But when the wheat is not growing, when there's an off season, the place is completely overrun by millions of little field mice. And this fellow, he even had a story about the field mice, and he had pretty pictures of them. He said they sing love songs to each other, these millions of field mice. So when you have to grow them wheat, what do you think you have to do? You slaughter the field mice. And I'm sure they don't do it gently. But I remember even one time on Facebook, I mentioned this when somebody talked about me being a nun, how dare I eat cheese or something, and I put this thing on, this story, don't want to be political. Then this person said, well, you can't help that. But that's really bizarre. It's very naive. So the bigger point here, if we analyze it, the Buddha's view is just by existing, we are harming sentient beings. I mean, the world is pervaded by sentient beings. Our body is a walking zoo, We just by existing, we're breathing them in, we're stomping on them, we're driving over them, even the vegetables and all the nice vegan food we eat is coming directly from the result of the life and the slaughter of countless animals. So when we have that bigger picture, it's much more sobering, and it's not a political issue, it's a really personal one. So all we can do is do our best, Roxy. Be conscious that everything we do harms sentient beings, which means that we can't stop living. If you're going to, the only way to stop harming beings is die and give your body to them. Well, that's kind of turned off. Don't know what happened. So are we communicating, Roxy? Are we communicating, Roxy?
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we've got to be conscious and do our best,
are
and do our best. Even if we think of when we eat the vegetables, we're not eating flesh, we have to think of those creatures who died and realize due to their, the slaughtering of those millions of field mice, I've got a plate of wheat. It's got to be like with everything. So everything we do has to help us become more conscious. And whatever we do, if we can avoid harming sentient beings, do our best to do that. Absolutely. Do you understand my point, Roxy?
Yeah, it's tricky.
It is tricky, darling.
Because the idea of so many bucket loads of seeds being created that gives us the opportunity, all 7 billion of us, to have a life now, and yet those lives that we've all chosen, I guess, to come back, and then is depleting the planet. So in fact, it does seem like not having so many babies would help.
Oh, I see. No, that's another discussion now. That's another discussion.
That's
another discussion. No, the thing is there, you see. The fact is, on another way of looking at that, of course, the earth is pretty horrible, and the suffering, the human realm is pretty depressing, and a lot of sickness, a lot of suffering. But given that there are trillions of consciousnesses out there, all being reborn in different realms of existence, if you're going to have a choice, then it's best they have a human one. So if you do want babies, that's still your choice. You don't have to have babies, but there's nothing wrong with giving a person a human life. That's pretty amazing. As long as you give them a good life, that's marvelous. You understand? And it's the karma of that sentient beings to have the human life as well. So of course it's very nuanced. It's much more nuanced and more kind of subtle than we tend to think of it. You understand? But it's a good thing. We need to contemplate these things. We need to contemplate them. Thank you, Roxy. Very kind. What else, Mayor?
Thank you very much.
The next question is from Susan Fujimoto.
Yes, Susan.
She asks, is attachment to ego a human species instinct and empowered or reduced by past karma?
Attachment to who we are is not just human, it's all sentient beings, all the trillions of ants and roaches and dogs and monkeys, and there are other realms of existence the Buddha would assert exist. What drives all of us, what keeps us on this wheel of life, is this ego grasping, literally called ego grasping, this very profound primordial misconception about a concrete self that then causes to create karma, that then causes to have attachment, which then causes, and we're creating these countless series of rebirths just in one day. It's not just humans, it's everybody. So the whole job is to loosen the grip of that approach. First, by controlling your body and speech with the servants of your crazy mind, then by unpacking and unraveling the contents of your mind and beginning to give up attachment and anger and all the gross delusions, and then you go more subtle and give up even the ego grasping, which is the root delusion, by realizing emptiness and cutting the root of all suffering, and then you add bodhicitta and amazing compassion to it, and you've got the 2 wings of a bird, and then you become a Buddha. So it's a long-term process. But it's not just humans, darling. Everybody. What else? Mayor.
Sasha asks, if we don't kill mice and rats out of love and compassion and our home gets overrun with them, then what to do? Pray for them to leave, and if they don't, then have the gardener kill them in traps.
No, there's a lot. No. There's okay. First of all, we those cockroaches, those rats, those rapists we meet are our own karmic appearance, which is a very powerful concept. They're not just some creatures out there from their own side dumping their problems onto us. We have karmic connection with those beings. So those beings in our house, the rats and the roaches, whatever, that's due to us harming them in the past. So even just by purifying karma, Sasha, by doing the 4 opponent powers, by regretting whatever you did in the past to harm these sentient beings, and then by having compassion, and then by purifying, and then vowing not to do it again, don't be surprised they go away. So there's one way, powerful way, when you understand karma, that why they're there in the first place is due to your karmic connection. You can purify that. And the other thing is we're also intelligent as humans. If you decide to do something, meaning I will not kill rats, then I guarantee you look up on the internet, you're going to find a half a dozen or 20 methods to how to get rid of rats without harming them. There's lots of things we can do. We just have to make effort, that's all. Not just as simple as killing them or not killing them. That's always our first option. Should I kill them? There's a million other things we can do. And that's not that necessarily easy, but it's possible. More, Mare? Any questions?
Yes. Robert Arney asks, this lecture makes me feel guilty that I'm addicted to sugar and could die of diabetes. I gave up meat and coffee readily. I'm dating a yogini Tibetan Buddhist who lives beyond the Great Firewall, and even that doesn't give me enough motivation. Got any special tips that could help me, because I do feel imperfectly Buddhist to look too much like Maitreya statues. Any vows I should take?
Don't worry about sugar. Who cares? Just your body, darling. Relax. Don't worry about it. We're not discussing. I'd rather you don't kill and don't steal and don't lie than not eat sugar. Who cares you don't eat sugar? So what? Check your body, If it's not causing you so much worry, don't worry about it. We're all full of attachment. Better to be attached to sugar than to killing. So for goodness sake, get some perspective. Nothing wrong with eating sugar. I mean, for goodness sake, don't be fundamentalist. I use sugar and causing diabetes as an analogy for the Buddhist approach to not killing. In other words, you don't not eat sugar because your doctor says. Then you feel guilty and you think that she's punishing you by giving you diabetes. That was the meaning of my analogy. That's how we think of morality, that someone's going to punish me if I kill. No, your doctor doesn't punish you with sugar. She advises you that it could give you diabetes. So if it could give you diabetes, well, honey, give it up. Be practical. But if it doesn't, well, then just control your sugar. It's okay, for God's sake. Offer it. Bless it. Make it delicious. And enjoy your sugar, for goodness sake. But live in vows of not killing and not stealing and not lying. That's better. That's what's important. Don't get too caught up in food. It's ridiculous. It's just the body, for God's sake. Eating good food is just samsara, like eating bad food. It's just your body. It's attachment to your body. So I only use that as an analogy, not as a real teaching. I don't care what you eat. What else?
Stephanie Harvey says, Roxy's question and the discussion. Is the fact that we cannot live in samsara without hurting others a good reason to embrace renunciation?
That's the point, yes.
And then the follow-up is, how can we limit the injury we do to others while we are in samsara?
By being conscious. Control your body, control your speech, live in vows, practice, purify, become conscious, have compassion. That's the path. That's what the whole path is to enlightenment. That's the answer. Next.
Faye asks, when we do a purification practice, how do we know for sure we are purified?
When you realize emptiness, baby. That's when you purify, when you realize emptiness. So what purification is you're putting atomic bombs on the seeds, but you're not pulling them out at the root. It's only when you realize emptiness. It's only when you realize there's no inherent I, no inherent good, no inherent bad, no inherent up, no inherent down. When you realize that, then you cut the root then. But you've got to keep control of your weeds. So that's why doing purification every day is so necessary, because it clears the ground and gives space to grow the flowers, which is the virtues. And that's why you've got to keep ahead of the game all the time, because if you don't purify every day, if you don't weed every day, they'll come again. That's why you've got to keep purifying and keep practicing and keep weakening the tendencies. That's what it does. Every time you say, I regret having killed because I'm sick of suffering, and then have compassion for those you kill, and then purify it, and then vow not to do it again. This is a powerful process of purifying your mind, of transforming your mind. So that's why you've got to keep doing it until eventually you realize emptiness. Then you can relax. What else?
Sydney Cohn asks, how does purifying internal karma exactly translate to purifying external karma?
I don't know
Is
what
there
that, I don't know what it means, darling. You have to explain to me what you mean by that question. I'm so sorry.
Sydney Cohn
Can you
asked
speak to
the
me,
question.
Sydney? Are you there? Would you like to say it out loud? Sydney? Are you there, Sydney? Because I don't understand it, sweetheart. I can't see Sydney anywhere. So, Sydney, if you'd like to clarify that question, I'd be very happy to answer it. Meanwhile, tell me another question, Leah.
Sydney says she's going to rephrase.
Good. Thank you, darling. Thank you.
So the next question is from Karen, and she says, I have more spiders than you can count and have taken hundreds out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
How do I purify this since I don't know what karma I did in the past to cause this?
No, I understand.
Or should I general Vajrasattva and continue to take them out of the house?
No, it's a very particular karma you have. I mean, this is where if we think everything is personal, as Lama Zopa says, everything's our own karmic appearance. You know, we tend to think it's kind of a bit, good luck and bad luck. I've got a house with lots of spiders, you know. But I mean, with spiders, maybe you've got to go a bit deeper. How do you get to the root of where I mean, don't you have to find where the nests are and try and, with kindness, try and remove the nests? Isn't that the way to do that? I mean, I don't know about these creatures. I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, there must be so many things, but what you're doing so far, yeah. But surely you can get to the root of it. I mean, I really don't know. You have to know these spiders and where they live. And without being horrible to them, you can try and remove their nest, surely. If you don't want to live with them. I mean, you know. You can learn to be like Geshe Rabten, one of our wonderful lamas, who during his many years intensive retreats in his little hut in Dharamsala, when he wrote a little story about his retreat after that, he talked about how he learned to live with the mice. And he watched how they all played and how they did things. They were so clever. And then he said the only way he could stop the mice from tickling his head while he meditated was to wear a hat. So that's really shows. So that's an advance, okay? So if you can live like that and have the spiders crawl all over you, aren't you wonderful? But honey, it's very practical. I can't imagine living with spiders. I don't know what I'd do, you know. But I mean, try and look at the root of it. Get to the root of it if you want to get them to be moved away without harming them. But in other words, don't have to be passive about it, but you can also be very proactive. But one of purifying, yeah, but no, you see, the one with purifying is very practical. Whatever the action is, you see, the karma that you're experiencing right now is the third kind of karma. It's called experiences similar to the cause. So if someone lies to you, that's the experience similar to the cause of your lying in the past. If creatures are, invading your house, such as the spiders, that's because you've done something similar as that. So when you do your regret, the first step is regret. So the way, what regret purifies is that very kind of karma. So if you strongly regret when you do your practice at night, deep in the depths of your being, whatever harm like that you did to these spiders in the past, and truly regret it because you don't want that suffering, and then you have incredible compassion for them, and then you do strong mantra to purify, and then you vow not to invade other people's houses again, that's the direct purification of that direct action. But meanwhile, also be practical and see if you can get to the root of it and see if you can gently remove their nests and put them somewhere else. Like I've done with my ants now. I put food outside and now they go out there instead of my counter. That's all I can say. My advice to you, darling. Or move your house. What can you say? If you give it to the ants, you can have it, baby, and you leave. Or the spiders, you know. That's another approach. Bodhisattvas, have it. You win, babies. It's yours.
I guess my question was also, if you don't mind, Venerable Robina, was when it's something like spiders, which really is not, they don't really annoy me, but just I can't seem to control them. But how do you know, how do you translate that to the action that you did in the past?
That's what I said just now. But I said it just now. You didn't hear me.
No, I know. I'm just saying other things, more general.
Yeah, but have a look at it. Yeah, exactly. Okay. First of all, there's the karma of your own tendencies. That's pretty clear. If you lie all the time, you can deduce you've lied. If you are loving all the time, you can deduce you've been loving. So it's fairly easy to see the karma of your own tendencies. Would you agree with that, Karen? The first kind of karma, darling, is your own tendencies. It's the first way your karma ripens in this life. Your own mental tendencies. If you're good at music, you can deduce you've done it before. If you're good at killing, you can deduce you've done it before. If you're good at math, you can deduce you've done it before. It's as simple as that. So that's why you've got to know your own mind. First of all, can you get that one?
Yeah.
That's the first one. No, darling, I'm about to answer you. Listen. That's the first way your karma ripens. There are 4. The very first is the fact you've got a human body. That's the fruit of virtue. Within this human body, which is the second way your karma ripens, is your own mental tendencies. Do you hear me, Karen?
Yes.
Third is called experiences similar to the cause. Now I've lost you. I can't see where your picture is. You've gone. There you are. So the third one is called experiences. So Karen, this is the karma that's all the way you're seen and treated by other sentient beings. We're very social beings. We have friends, we have enemies, we have neighbors, we have husbands, we have ex-husbands, we have spiders, we have mice, we have pets, we have other creatures in our life. Would you agree with this? You with me? That's called experiences similar to the cause. So if people like you, it's because you've been kind before. If people don't believe your words, it's because you've lied before. If people don't pay their bills, it's because you've stolen before. If spiders invade your house, it's because you've invaded their houses before. Speaking simply, you look at the character of the way people harm you, and that tells you. That's why it's called experiences similar to the cause. Are you with me, Karen?
Yes, that is very helpful.
So in other words, it's like, say your sister always thinks you're lying. We want her to change. We think it's not fair. I'm not lying. Well, that's because you've lied in the past. So the way you'd use regret there, you'd regret whatever lying you did in the past, which is causing her to not believe you. Then you have compassion, and then you purify it, and then you vow not to do it again. Don't be surprised she starts believing you. Regret shifts that particular karma. Do you do the 4 opponent powers? Do you know it?
Yeah.
Well, only vaguely. You only know it vaguely, right?
Yeah.
The more, honey, the more specific you are, the more. This is specific stuff. So if you want that practice, I can post it. I'll give it to Mare. She can send it, or you can email me if you like and get it. I can give it to you. But you got to be specific, Karen, because karma is very specific. It's not just vague. Do you understand me?
Yes, that's
Good,
very
darling.
helpful. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay, sweetheart. Okay. Are there more there, so I can keep on? Shall I keep on talking about things?
There's a couple more.
Okay, go on.
Laurel B says, I used to be a seafood chef. As a result, I have killed probably thousands of little sea creatures.
Yes.
This was before I took vows as a Buddhist.
Yes.
I sincerely regret this. Will Vajrasattva practice help with this karma?
Of course.
And what would be the best practice?
Of course, darling, all of it. I mean, the point is, the purification practice, not just the Vajrasattva mantra, that's the 3rd step. There are 4 steps, like I was saying to Karen. And if people want this practice, you ask me, and I will send it to Mare, and you can get it from her, or you email me directly. I can give it to you. Karma is precise. Everything that happens every millisecond is the fruit of seeds we have planted. It's not just some vague, thing. It's precise. It's very logical. So purifying it is equally logical. So there are 4 steps. And there's no karma we can't purify, sweetheart. There's no karma we can't purify. I mean, you've killed those creatures in this life. We've all killed countless creatures in countless lifetimes. We've all got those karmic seeds, So the sooner we purify them, better. So you regret the killing because you don't want future suffering yourself. Regrets for your own sake. Second, you have compassion for them and you take refuge. Third, you do the purification of Vajrasattva. And 4, you vow not to do it again. That's the purification process, honey. There's nothing better. It's the perfect one. So if you want that practice, you email me or you email Mare, and I'll give the practice to Mare, and you can have it downloaded or something, whatever you like.
A lot of people have asked for the practice from last night, so I'll send out both.
Good. I'll send it. I'll send you the copy. I'll send you a PDF of the practice, including teachings about how karma ripens and all these things we're discussing. I'll send you a little document, and then you can get it from Mare's website. But if you've got my email, you email me, and I'll happy to send it to you. This is really the first level of practice: controlling your body, controlling your speech, and living in vows, and taking refuge, and purifying. They are the components of this first level of practice. This gives you the ground. It's the basis. It's the foundation upon which you can grow all the other levels of practice. Then you can begin to see your mind to the next level. Then you can begin to meditate properly. Then you can go to the compassion wing. It's a very natural, grounded, incremental way you develop yourself. And if you miss any steps, like in anything, you won't do it properly. It's utterly necessary, and it's a profound daily practice. If you take refuge, live in vows, do purification, you couldn't wish for better. You can sit back with your feet up and eat popcorn and watch telly all day. Okay.
Robert has another question. He says, thanks for giving me psychological relief, and I do pledge again not to kill or lie. My skinny Tibetan Buddhist girl from China translates Buddhism into Chinese, so Buddha is at the center of our relationship. But she says she's not big enough to accept someone overweight as her partner. This seems
Come on.
the only issue between us other than viral border closures. What would you say to her if she asked you?
Well, darling, I don't want to talk to her. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you, babe. And if you're the one who's overweight and you've got a skinny girlfriend who doesn't like you because you're fat, well, excuse me, she's not worthy of you. Drop her. Thank you. Are you really serious, Robert?
I'm really serious. It is very, very hard to find a girlfriend who is interested in China, and I'm trying to write a book about China, and who is also a Tibetan Buddhist. She's one of Michael Roach's people, by the way. But
you're telling me she doesn't like you because you're fat.
And that's it. But she keeps talking to me.
Why does she have to be your girlfriend? Why can't she just be a friend? Is she happy to have a fat friend, not a fat boyfriend? I mean,
she probably would accept that, no problem.
Then if you really love her, you can get skinny, Robert. It's up to you what you really want. What do you really want? Do you want to be fat or do you want to have her? Which is more? Which will you prefer?
That's a darn good question. And
you got to look at it. You got to decide.
I would rather have her.
Okay, well, you better lose some weight, baby.
That's right. And I also want to be a more mindful Buddhist, and I feel like that would help.
Good, it will. You're absolutely right. So first junior school, control your body. Make a decision, go on a diet. And you'll do it. You can be, it's possible. You won't die. You just have to not put your hand on the food. And you make a decision. You work out a plan, and if you think she's worthwhile, then get skinny, and then you'll find out if it's really worthwhile, because she still mightn't like you. So don't get too excited about it.
This is true.
All right, Robert.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, honey. What else, man?
Sherry asks, what does cancer diagnosis tell you about your karma, and what kind of self-talk can help? Example, if your eye is affected, what do you tell your eye to help your eye heal?
Well, your eye, there's no eye in the first place. So it's okay. So darling girl, listen, what?
It's eye, like eyeball.
Oh, it's her eyeball. You mean due to cancer, her eyeball is...
example.
What?
Her example is if your eye, as in your eyeball, is affected.
By cancer. By cancer.
Yes.
What's the question?
What does cancer diagnosis tell you about your karma?
It tells you it's past. Every general principle, sweetheart. Every moment of what we label suffering is the fruit of a negative action. It's just a natural law. So sickness is the result of, it's the third kind of karma called, it's called environmental karma. Getting sick and having things like COVID-19 or cancer, that's the fruit of past killing. I mean, it's the universal one right now. That's the result of past killing, sweetheart. So, by purifying killing, like those 4 steps like we talked, stop regretting the killing because you don't want suffering, having compassion for those we've killed, doing the purification practice, vowing not to kill again, as well as taking care of your health, don't be surprised that you could change it. Depends on how strong the cancer is. But any sickness is a fruit of, is environmental karmic result of killing. That's it. So purify it. That's what we're trying to do with everything, Or see it as, also the other thing is any moment of suffering we have, if every moment is a fruit of a seed, then every moment we experience something, it's the finishing of those seeds. So we should be also delighted that we're purifying, By having sickness, you're purifying your negative karma. It's another very powerful approach to see it, which makes us very confident. It makes us very optimistic, very happy. It's another approach. So, what time is it? 10 to 8. We've got 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Okay. What?
2 more questions,
They'll
Venerable.
keep coming forever. Let's stop for a minute. I'll have them in a minute, people. Okay, I promise I'll answer them. So listen, just back up. So the whole thing we're discussing here, the point of all this, as Mayor asked me in the beginning, was to talk about the power of speech, which means we looked yesterday particularly at that. But the general point, which we're discussing more today, is the first, seeing it in the framework of the first level of Buddhist practice as a basis for growing ourselves, then mentally, and then going to the compassion wing, and then finally, becoming a Buddha. It's one step at a time. And to really get to see, like we were talking yesterday a bit, how we because we're so disconnected from ourselves, because we're so self-conscious, and not in a good way, what self-conscious means, we're all the time observing, and this is the attachment to reputation. Because we walk in the world, we walk into shops, we walk into places, we go to people, we have families, and some of us, we can see we have weird behavior. I know a person who people think is mentally ill when they see him. They think he's an alcoholic. They think he's on drugs. He's not an alcoholic. He's not mentally ill, and he's not on drugs. But he talks a way that looks like people think he's strange. So this is kind of very fascinating karma. So the way that people see us, that's even the direct result of our karma. If a person thinks you're lying all the time, you're not lying, but they think you are. That's due to past actions. So when we understand karma, it gives us a very powerful way to interpret how we appear to other people. Because in our mind, we have one sense of who we think we are, don't we? I mean, you could, let's say, be beautiful. Everyone is just riveted by your beauty. You might know that, but you feel like some complete worm inside you. We know that. Some people can be quite ugly in conventional terms, but they feel very content in who they are, So we've got this there's this disconnect, first of all, between ourselves and who we think we are, but there's also this terrible disconnect between who we think we are and how we appear to others. And because we have this very strong need to be approved of, it's almost every second we're with other people, we're frantic, our ego is frantically watching how they're responding to us. And if they smile at us, then we feel relieved. Oh, wow, I must be an okay person. But if they look at us weird, if they accuse us of lying, if they think that we're on drugs, or they think we're kind of mentally ill, then we get really disturbed, don't we? Then we get all paranoid, and we completely freak out, and we don't know how to talk to people because we want to be approved of, But this is really kind of interesting. So we understand karma from our past karma that determines the way people see us now. Like I said yesterday, there's this one man who pretends to be a Buddhist monk, but he's got some charisma. He's lying every second. He's a maniac. But people like him. That's due to some virtuous karma in the past, from past telling the truth that they think he's a lovely person. So we've got to first recognize what's going on here, and then we have to look at how other people see us, and then learn about our own karma, and then we have to take some responsibility. I mean, me in my life, like Lama Yesi said to me, I told you yesterday, Nothing wrong with your heart, dear. It's just your behavior. So all my life, because I was uncontrolled, I'd speak too much, I'd shout, I'd abuse people. I was a bit of a bully to my family, my sisters. Then and then because I felt in myself I was an innocent little girl, I really meant well, then people would think I'm being abusive even when I wasn't. So I'd get paranoid and always worried about what people thought of me. And then I'd feel sorry for myself. Well, I realized at some point, yes, it's due to past karma that people may see me in a certain way, but I can't be an innocent victim. I have to look into my behavior and see what I have to change. And I still have to learn to harness my behavior. Even now, people can't stand the sight of me. I mean, one center last year, had a letter from somebody saying that I'm mentally ill, I'm so aggressive, people should be protected from me, and I've got no empathy, and really serious criticisms. So I've got to really listen to that and see if there's any validity in it. Often there is none whatsoever. It's another person's perception. But I've also got to take responsibility and realize I've got to be more careful with my words. I've got to be more careful how I behave. You can't make everyone happy. You can't expect to do that. The Dalai Lama doesn't make everyone happy. Millions of Chinese people hate him. You can't win, but we've got to, on the one hand, be conscious of how we appear to others and do our best to control our speech and control our body. Eventually, that really becomes the bodhisattva practice. They say one way to look at your life is when you're on your own, you watch your mind. When you're with others, you watch your behavior. Why? It's because that's what appears to others. That's a compassion to other people, that you consciously try to behave nicely. You don't just want to vomit out what you feel and do what you want because you think you've got the right, which is the way we are now, so self-centered. We know people like that, and we can't stand them because we see how self-centered they are. They don't think of other people. They don't think of how they impact upon others. So we have to think that. So when you're on your own, you watch your mind. When you're with others, you watch your behavior. And you don't do it in a wrong way. You do it in a correct way. You try and think that you're there, that your body and your speech are for the sake of the person in front of you. This is so profound. You actually try to think of them, not in the way of wanting to make them like you, that's self-centered, but to try and genuinely realize that your presence is impacting upon people. So you learn to become conscious in a proper way, not in the self-conscious, embarrassed way. And this just takes practice. It just takes time, you know. It's very important. It's all part of our practice. So, you know, we might think we're doing nothing wrong, and we might not be, but that's due to past karma. For example, me, with, you know, one of the, they say the karmic result of past abusing others is that even when you're speaking softly, people think you're being abusive. That I also have. So I have to recognize that and be extra careful. I can't win. I can't make everyone like me. I don't want to do that, but you accept that if they don't. But you've got to take always responsibility. What was my part in that? What did I do anything wrong? If you didn't, you accept it and let the person have their criticism, you know. So we've got to learn to become unself-conscious in a good way, and not, but also not self-conscious in a bad way. Always worried about what people are thinking, which is this main attachment to us. Main one is frantic in us, all the time worrying about what people think about us. We go mad. That is when we go mad, you know. And so we're constantly trying to adjust our behavior to what we think will make a person happy. That's the wrong way to do it. The other one is to learn to try to have a genuine respect for for the person who's there, and be conscious of that person and know that you're there. Your words are for their benefit and your body is for their benefit. That's applying the Bodhisattva path. It's very powerful, you know. But all this takes time. We've got to start somewhere. Start by controlling your body, controlling your speech, and beginning to control your mind. The remaining 3 of this 10 little checklist of don'ts of the Buddhas, his first level of practice, are about the mind. So when we learn more about the mind, when we go to high school, we really start to become our own therapists. That's where we learn about the divisions of the contents of our mind. The neuroses and the delusions are all the ego-based rubbish, which are the cause of our pain and the cause of why we harm others. And then there's the virtuous, positive states of mind. So we need to distinguish between these. But at this very first level of practice, in the last 3 of these 10, it's the beginning. I like to put it this way: it's the beginnings of working on our mind. And so Buddha takes these 3 main poisons, as he calls them, the 3 main toxic emotions: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. So we attempt to at least control the 3 heavier levels of these. The heavy level of attachment is at least harness our constant craving. Some people have when you're like a junkie, when you can't stop smoking 80 cigarettes a day, when you have to eat all the time, when your attachment is extra powerful for the objects of the senses. That's, you know, extra heavy level of attachment, and that's very, very distressing for you. So at least harness that extra level of craving, always dissatisfied, always wanting something more. And that's one of our worst diseases. So learning to harness that, to become conscious of that. Then the really heavy duty level of anger, we can see this. You know, we can get angry, but then we let it go and you've forgiven the person. But anger, when you can't let it go and you want the other person to suffer, look at the world. This is the heaviest level of anger. Malice, ill will. You can't let go of it. You're thinking about them and you even want them to suffer. That's what makes other people harm others. This is the heaviest level of anger, and like a torture in the mind, you know. Learn to harness that one. And then the third one, learning to harness one of the manifestations of this ego grasping is a particular manifestation that it's like having a very narrow mind, fundamentalist, a very ignorant person. You know, black and white, and there's no kind of nuance, there's no shading. I'm right, you're wrong. A very narrow-minded person, a very racist person, a very sexist person, a very ignorant person. That's fundamentalism. It's a really good word for it, fundamentalism. And we've all got that tendency. I'm right, you're wrong. Very narrow, no space in the mind, to try and at least harness that one, you know. At least harness those 3. That's profound practice. So these 10 are incredible guidelines for you to become a really nice person for your sake. You've got to have that awareness. It's like training for you to become the person you want to become. It's not just a bunch of instructions to squeeze you and make you feel guilty. And then you add to that, you take refuge. Then you can narrow it down and take the 5 lay vows, which are from those 10. 3 of the body, one of the speech, lying, and the fifth one is no intoxicants. You don't have to take all those vows, you can take 4. But the power of vows is so stupendous. And you'd only take the vows when you're confident that Buddhism is your path and you want to take refuge first. And then every day, the purification practice. If you have those, if you tick those boxes, you have a perfect practice. Be content with it. And it's for your sake, for you to harness your own crazy energy, to take responsibility, not out of guilt, but out of self-respect, because you know you want to be happy. You want to become a better person. But it takes discipline, and we all know it's the hardest thing possible. And when we talk about controlling the body and the speech, look at us. We can't even control eating food. I mean, look, Robert's point. Forget about raping and killing and stealing and lying. We can't even control the food intake because we've got so much attachment and we have so much fear. That's why we have to look at attachment, you know. That's what makes us do things with our body and speech uncontrolled, because we're unconscious and we're constantly driven by dissatisfaction, which means we always want another cake and another this and another word and another something else. We're never ending, you know. So it takes effort. And what is effort? It's a really powerful point. Actually, in the Bodhisattva teachings, they talk about the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, okay? And that's the most profound level of the Bodhisattva. Bopping along life after life after life, perfecting their mind so they can become a Buddha. Well, one of them is called enthusiastic. No, what's one called? What am I talking about here?
Enthusiastic effort?
Yeah, effort. Enthusiastic perseverance or joyful effort, they call it. It's a profound level of practice. We can start it from the very beginning, but this is a really profound one to understand. What does effort mean, you know? Effort. We know the word effort, and it sounds horrible. So there's 3 levels of the opposite of enthusiastic perseverance or joyful effort. And it's very shocking to hear, but the opposite is called laziness. And there's 3 kinds of laziness, and we will recognize them intimately. Not how we think of laziness. The first one is, but what's the first kind of laziness is the obvious one. I can't be bothered. Think about this, it's profound. What can't we be bothered doing? The thing that takes too much effort. And what's the thing that takes effort is the thing that you're not good at. Obviously. So the main problem here is attachment. So attachment, one way of describing attachment at the most primordial level is addiction to our comfort zone. We want to be comfortable. Mentally and physically, so especially physical, we are addicted to our comfort zone. Every second of the day, what we're doing is adjusting the external world to make it that we can be comfortable, the right amount of food, the right temperature. I mean, I've got AC in my house. My kind house that Charmaine has given me in New Mexico. You know, it's hot out there. I have AC. I can adjust the temperature whenever I feel. It's like heaven on earth. So we do it. When do I eat food? When I go to the kitchen, because I want to be. I want to drink. I want food. Why? Because I'm not comfortable. My attachment is becoming hungry. You know. So everything we do, just normal daily life in our blessed lives of our wonderful houses. We're not homeless. We're not living on the street. We're lovely houses which we take for granted. Every second we are adjusting the physical world so I can be comfortable. That's called giving attachment what it wants. That doesn't mean you have to become a martyr and live in a cold house, you know, but I mean, eventually as a bodhisattva you wouldn't care, but that's okay, but be conscious of all these things. So we don't even think of it as anything. We don't even think of it as a problem, but every second we're fulfilling attachment's needs, we're doing the opposite of practice. So this is a really nuanced point. Don't get neurotic and think I've got to freeze at night instead of being comfortable, but do it with a pure motivation. That's bring the bodhisattva one. But at least if we understand this one of laziness, can't be bothered. So when it comes to our practice, when it comes to learning to eat less food, controlling our body, controlling our speech, we have to make effort. And why do you make effort? Because attachment doesn't want it. So effort is against attachment. And that's what effort is. I use the analogy of going to the gym. You know very well, if you go to the gym and you do your rowing or whatever it is you're doing, and the moment you feel uncomfortable, you stop and you say, oh, I did my rowing today. I did my push-ups today. No, you didn't. And you know nothing will change until you go beyond your comfort zone, until you start sweating and until you start feeling the pain of your muscles. Then you know your body will change. But your mind is the same. Until we make effort, until it's painful, nothing will change. And this is where attachment is so pervasive. This is not to make us feel guilty. It's just to make us understand and be conscious, you know. Giving up attachment is the most profound practice, and all we can do is do it incrementally according to our capacity. But it will necessarily be painful. Everything we're not good at doing means you've got to make effort, which you've got to go beyond, at your own pace, go beyond your comfort zone. It's got to feel uncomfortable. And then you go to the next level. Then you can do 5 push-ups and then 10 and then 20. It's incremental. That's how you progress. When you're learning music, learning math, doing anything at all, you have to make effort. So here we're talking about mental effort, giving up attachment, giving up craving. So the first level of laziness is called can't be bothered. The thing you can't be bothered doing is the thing that takes effort. And the thing that takes effort is the thing that attachment frantically doesn't want. First. Next level, more subtle, more nuanced, and more tricky. The second kind of laziness is, oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later. This is our worst crime against ourselves. So it's the first one with this extra level added on top. And we think it's virtuous. Oh, I'm so busy, I'll do it later. It is a lousy, rotten lie. The thing you put off doing is the thing that takes effort. That's it. Very simple. So we catch, I mean, it's so quick. It's in an instant. We hear the job we're supposed to do. We're talking practice here. We don't want to do it. I'll do it later. And so we feel better. But we know later never comes. And then what you do is end up carrying this burden of undone things. And when you finally do them, you can't believe it took 10 minutes. But you carry this burden of heaviness around. And that's the worse than the first one, because it's the first one plus the extra rubbish. Acting like you're holy. Oh, I'm so busy, I can't do it. Because you haven't prioritized it. That's it. It's very simple. And the third one, it doesn't seem immediately evident, but it's the one that goes, nah, can't do that, not possible. I'm not capable. I can't achieve that. That's the worst laziness of all. And that really sounds like humility, and it's not. It's the worst laziness. Of course we can achieve it, but it's one step at a time. When we have this, they say this is the most important one. We will achieve nothing if we don't have this enthusiasm. And you've got to make it happen. In the beginning, enthusiasm is exhausting, but eventually it becomes joyful. When you meet these bodhisattvas, when you meet Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who never sleeps, just to think of that, I get exhausted, just to think of it. He's got joy, full effort all the time. He's always blissfully, ridiculously happy. We can't understand this. The Dalai Lama, if you look at his life, and you check his political situation in his own country, with his own people, he should be profoundly depressed or raging angry, but he's funny and happy. This is because their minds are completely trained. They've given up attachment, given up fears, given up anger, given up ego, and have got enormous joy and enthusiasm. Okay, we've got to go towards that, one step at a time. But we are all capable. But we've got to go one humble step at a time. We all know, our mothers tell us, the first step, everything begins with the first step. You've got to see it as incremental, one step at a time. You pave the way, one tiny bit of effort, a little bit first, then a little bit more, then a bit more. We know that. And that's very much an understanding of dependent arising. Otherwise, you sit there in our own concrete mind, full of all of excitement and attachment, running around doing 1,000 things, and we collapse into misery and despair and become completely hopeless and full of paranoia, up and down like yo-yos, Just one step at a time. Never giving up. That's the attitude of the bodhisattva. They think in terms of eons, His Holiness says. Bodhisattvas think in terms of eons. They never give up, So I don't know. What else? Well, questions again. Mayor.
Sherry asks, what does dreams of X tell you about your karma?
Sorry, darling, what?
What do dreams of X, I
dreams,
imagine X
dreams,
partner,
dreams of X.
Of your X. of your ex.
What do you mean?
I
dream?
think she's like an ex-husband or
Oh,
ex-boyfriend.
your ex.
Or
You mean your boyfriend?
Ex.
Oh, I thought ACT.
Yeah.
Oh, EX.
ex tell you about your karma, and how can one get out of that cycle?
Well, obviously there's a karmic connection. I mean, the people you think about, you've got a karmic connection. Otherwise, you wouldn't even remember them. There's a strong karmic connection there. And obviously, if he keeps this person, whoever it is popping up in your dreams, it's because you've got undealt stuff in your own mind. So you've got to learn to deal, and this is the biggest problem for us in our culture. We confuse the events and what the ex did, and we think that's the problem. But no, that's just what he did. What we've got to deal with is whatever it is triggering in our mind: attachment, anger, hurt, jealousy. We've got to identify the delusion in our mind that person is triggering. So not to worry about the ex. He's just there, or she is just there as a symbol of whatever is in your mind. So you've got to deal with your mind. Give up whatever's in your mind. Your attachment, your hurt, your jealousy, your resentment, whatever it might be. Then they'll go away. But they might not, but it won't be horrible. They just pop up because they're like an image of something in your mind, you know. That's all I can say. I hope that's helpful. What else?
Okay, oh yeah, can you hear me well?
I can hear you okay.
Okay, thank you very much. It's just, I have just two questions. Buddhism so far, I agree with everything that I've learned so far. There's a lot more that I don't know, but so far I agree, and it's the worldview that I agree with and that I want to follow. And paying attention to the body, the speech, and watching the mind is motivating and an effort that makes sense. I can see the logic behind it. But then the part that is really tricky for me, because as soon as I get to that in a class or in a teaching or following someone, I just disconnect when they talk about, when it comes to visualizing, I just disconnect.
What do you mean? What do you mean visualizing, Tamara? What do you mean? Give an example.
Say like yesterday when you were guiding the meditation.
Oh, the meditation. Yeah, right. What happened?
Exactly. It's just I don't know how to explain this. Say when somebody starts to describe what I'm supposed to see in my mind, what I'm supposed to visualize, I just get I get distracted.
Why is that? So what is it in your mind, do you think? So what is the problem in your mind, do you think? What is the problem, do you think? Try and locate the problem in your mind. What is the problem?
What actually happens is, okay, if somebody says visualize a moon disk, I see the moon disk, but then I start thinking about it. It should be round. It should be this way or that way.
Okay, so you're getting, so the problem is you're getting, but you said before, the other thing you said you did is you disconnected. So that's two different things you're saying. One thing you're saying is when someone says visualize a moon disk, you started getting all into analytical about it. And the other thing is you said you disconnect. So which is the main problem? To get all over analytical or to disconnect?
What happens is I get stuck in the details. Like I start elaborating on top of what they say.
I understand
and then
that.
I just don't like it.
And that's exactly right. So what do you think you should do? I mean, do you want to do those meditations? Would you like to be able just to do it in a relaxed way?
Yeah, exactly. So my question is there a practice or a way for me to start practicing and getting better in that? Because I would like to.
I understand. So the thing you have to try and practice doing is just be humble enough just to hear the words and imagine it, even just to think the word. I mean, some people can't visualize anything. I can't visualize much, but I say the words and I have a feeling for the presence of it. That's enough, sweetheart. And don't get caught, just try and focus on what the person's saying and don't get caught up in the details. And then on your own, when you can do these visualized meditations, some people have a very good ability to do it very clearly. But just the simple thing is be very humble and try and just think it and imagine it and get the feeling for it. Not worry too much about the visual. Even though it seems a bit abstract like we did yesterday, first the moon disk, then the then the Om, and then this. It sounds a bit weird, but try and just get a feeling of it. And then you just get the feeling for it. That's the main thing, sweetheart, and not get too angry.
And that would be good enough, you're saying. That's just.
Well, darling, what else can you do? You're not capable of anything else. When you first
Okay,
learn
okay.
to ride a bike and someone gives you the exact instructions and you get on the bike and you can't do it properly at all, you fall off the bike, don't you? But you've got to know that's part of the process. You've got to be given the exact right instructions, but then you do your best with it, sweetheart. But to try and imagine doing it perfectly and then get depressed because you can't do it, that's kind of ridiculous. Like, of course you can't ride a bike first. Of course you can't do anything properly first, but you've got to be given the right instructions and then you do your best with it and relax and enjoy it and try and get the feeling of it. That's so important, sweetheart.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Good,
Thank
darling.
you.
Wonderful. What else, ma'am?
Nisha asks, are bad intentions as bad actions?
No, darling, of course not. You have it, like I said before, there are 4 things in place that you need in order for an action to become a complete action, which sows a seed in your bank vault that ripens as a type of rebirth. So you can have the thought to kill the ant, and then you decide not to do it. Well, of course it's not the same as killing the ant. Of course it's not the same, darling. I mean, that's why, exactly good point, we have to first control the body and the speech. At least don't do the actions, because that's when it harms others. But at least you don't do the actions. Then you begin to control your mind. That's why the mind is more hard to control than the body and speech. That's really obvious. If we can't possibly control our mind, if we can't control our body and speech. So you start with your body and speech and be delighted about that. I mean, when you live in vows are only about body and speech. They're not about the mind. Vows are behavior, and that's so stupendously powerful. If we can control our behavior first, then we begin to work on our minds, darling, when we have the space. It's clearly not the same. It's obvious.
Wendy has her hand raised.
Yes, Wendy.
Hi, Robina.
Hello, darling.
I have a question. Like when babies are born, right? They attach to their mothers, right?
Well, depending on the karma, some don't. But if there's a karmic connection there, yes. Some
That's
babies
true.
don't like their mothers, and some mothers can't stand their babies. But generally speaking, if there is a karmic connection and a good one, they will connect. Absolutely, yes.
So that connection is not seen as attachment.
Of course it is. Good God, what else? Why would you attach to anything if you weren't attached? If you're an ordinary sentient being, Wendy, if you're not a bodhisattva, the person you get close to is the person you're attached to. Of course it's attachment. What else would it be? There's only... What?
It's a healthy attachment, right?
No, depends. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, sure, there's levels of attachment, darling. There's levels of attachment. I'm glad my mother was attached to me and thought I was gorgeous, because she would have killed me otherwise. And that's what's missing in some mothers who can't stand their children. You can see that, because it's either attachment for us or it's aversion, Wendy. Until we're bodhisattvas, there's either attachment or aversion. There's no choice. Or if there's indifference, you couldn't care less, let them die. But that's almost like aversion. So, of course, you can say it's healthy insofar as long as love is there as well. But if there's no love there, then honey, it ain't healthy. That's the maniac, possessive, manipulative mother who destroys the child with her attachment. So the love part is what makes it valid. The attachment is always attachment, but you mix it with lots of love, then you can have a reasonable relationship. That's why we've got to distinguish between the delusions and the virtues. But we don't do that in our psychology. Do you understand me?
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a really important point. Attachment is a delusion that over-exaggerates the deliciousness of an object. So it's so evident mothers have that in bucket loads for their babies. I mean, a mother can see 1,000 photos of children and her child will be shining out like with a halo in that 1,000 pictures, because that's the one she's got a karmic connection with and then she has attachment for. But also, fortunately, love and compassion as well. If without the love and compassion, you have attachment and you'll destroy the child, and then when you get angry, you'll kill them, you know. That's because there's no love so love and compassion are our saving grace. Do you understand? Good. Yes, ma'am.
Question from Faye. She says, can you go over briefly about the emptiness we realize after purifying a lot? What do you mean we would realize there is ultimately no one generating bad karma?
Okay, I just said all that. Yes, it's hard for us. We haven't heard about emptiness before. But the point is here, the point is we create negative karma because we have these over-exaggerated viewpoints in our mind about the very status of self and everything else. We don't realize we do this, it's so subtle, but this is what Buddha's saying. So we see everything as very concrete and solid and this and that with no nuance, no interdependence. So that's because, the root delusion we have is this ego grasping that believes in this solid concrete me. And then I do a bad action, then I do a good action. It's very concrete, very solid, very unnuanced, very uninterdependent. So when we start to purify by regretting the actions, lessening the tendencies by purifying, by vowing not to do again, and by living in vows, those two practices of purification and living in vows are like atomic bombs under all those heavy tendencies and also on the karmic seeds from the past. So it leaves space in the mind. So when there's more space in the mind, that means when you pull some of the weeds out, there's more space for the flowers to grow. So the weeds is an analogy for the negative tendencies and negative karma, and the flowers is an analogy for the virtue. So virtuous states of mind are more spacious. They're more connected to interdependence, which is reality. The delusions are very absolute and concrete. Virtues are more spacious. So when our mind can become then gradually more virtuous, less attached, less angry, less killing, less harming, more spacious, more kind, we're moving more towards the reality that everything is interdependent. When we finally realize interdependence, then we've realized there's no inherent I, no inherent this, no inherent that. The concreteness has gone. We see things more subtly, in a more nuanced way. That's wisdom, and that's when we can't create much negative karma. And when you finally realize dependent arising and finally realize emptiness, then you've cut the root of that ignorance, and you can't create negative karma after that. And that's when you cut the seeds. So it's a very gradual, organic, psychological process going from rigidity and neurosis and paranoia and delusion and schizophrenic to more spacious, more loving, more eventually more wise. It's like a natural internal process, and that's because that's reality. Reality is that everything is interdependent. Reality is that everything works harmoniously, and that's what virtue is. So add wisdom to that virtue, then you're really on the track,
Thank you. And sorry, just a quick follow-up question. So if there's nothing inherently good, then the Buddha, how do you apply emptiness to the Buddha? Like
everything's the same, Faye. This is where it's tricky for us. Because when we hear that negative stuff is empty, when we think, oh, well, there's really no negative stuff. And then we hear that Buddha is empty and virtue is empty, then we get very depressed. Oh, well, there's no Buddha either. It's not like that. It's much more nuanced than that. Everything that exists, Faye, is said to have no intrinsic nature. Everything that exists is interdependent. And everything that exists, therefore, lacks this inherent existence. A Buddha is empty of inherently existing. A hell realm is empty of inherently existing. Positivity is empty of inherently existing. Negativity is empty of inherently existing. And that means they're all interdependent. That means they're dependent arisings. So the first level is cause and effect. So a Buddha is the fruit of lots of causes, of good causes of wisdom and virtue that culminate in a Buddha. So the fact that a Buddha is the result of causes proves the Buddha is empty of intrinsic existence. A negative action is also empty of intrinsic existence because it's a dependent arising. There was you, and then this and that, a whole series of causes came together and the action happened. So dependent arising is proving that everything is empty, and that everything is empty proves dependent arising and cause and effect. So it doesn't deny existence. Initially we hear it like that. As soon as we hear that things are empty, we think there's nothing. As soon as we hear things are dependent arising, we think, oh, phew, there is something. So we've got these two extreme views right now, and we've got to bring these together and realize that actually they're harmonious. They each point to the other. This takes a bit of thinking about, darling.
Thank you so much. It's really helpful.
Good, darling. Thank you.
Mohini asks, at work it is considered good to be ambitious, be self-driven, and there's politics involved. How can we reconcile contentment and ambition?
That's a really good point, yeah. It's a really good point. I'll answer that. I saw a note just then from a private person who wants to take refuge. So then if anyone wants to discuss that, you can email me. And my email address is Robina Courtin, ROBINACOURTIN, Robina Courtin @mac.com. If anyone wants to discuss it with me personally, you're very, very welcome. Robina Courtin @mac.com. There it is. You email me and discuss it. I'm very happy to help. Okay. So now, okay. So yeah, this is where we have to see, there's one way of talking in Buddhist psychology. You can list the names of all the delusions, and then you can list the names of all the virtues, and each of them is completely opposite to the other. But there's another more spacious kind of way of talking, in the way we'd more talk in our culture. You can very easily say you're really ambitious and you want to become a Buddha. I mean, Lama Zopa is like a fanatic. He's a fanatic Buddhist. He works day and night. I mean, talk about, people think being a Buddhist means having a bit of balance. Load of rubbish. There's no balance in Lama Zopa's life. He's just 100% virtuous every second. 100% he meditates. He never wastes a single second. He's only working for others, only meditating. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't waste a single second. That's fanatic. So that's great. Be a fanatic bodhisattva. Wow, what kind of, that's a wonderful fanatic. So you can be ambitious to want to be a Buddha. A bodhisattva has got massive ambition to never give up being a Buddha, but it's completely rooted in virtue. Maybe the Wi-Fi here, I've got to get something stronger. I don't know. It's just happened lately a few times. So, so then if it's rooted in virtue, let's say you want to become a millionaire. Let's say you're on the bodhisattva path and you want to make millions of dollars. But it's based on bodhicitta. You want to make lots of money so you can do so much good. This is an incredible motivation. Unbelievable, don't hesitate. So the very first level of practice, you've got to play safe. The junior school entry level is you play safe. You try to harness your energy. Don't be too greedy. Give up attachment. Give up too much food. Give up too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Harness your energy. Be disciplined. But when you've got that harnessed energy and more discipline and less attachment, now you go to the bodhisattva path and you kind of add enthusiasm now, and that's based on bodhicitta, on the wish to be a benefit to others. Just thinking you've got to live a nice quiet life because it's easier and you don't want too much money, that's just called laziness. I mean, if you really are renounced, live in the cave, great. But if you don't just rest on your laurels or think about it as, I don't want to have too much, or I've really got enough already. It has to do with you. You want to have more so you can help all the Buddhist centers in the world. You want to have more so you can do all this good. It's a really important energy to have, but do it kind of like with enthusiasm. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. Don't be guilty. Don't be scared of it. We're very scared of these kind of things. I shouldn't be ambitious. I shouldn't have money. I shouldn't have a big job. I shouldn't have, whatever. That's really narrow-minded. But you've got to know where you're at in this path. If you're addicted to money, then be careful with it. If you're addicted to being well known as the best lawyer, then you be careful. Give it up. But if you can do it with enthusiasm and delight to use your energy, to use your resources to help others, wow. Don't just sit on it and think, aren't I lucky, No, that's laziness. Use it. Be proactive. Be optimistic with it, and you want to use it to help others. That's fantastic. So it all comes down to what's in your mind, and that's why you have to know your mind first. You can't play with this stuff, and that's why it's incremental, it's progressive, it's one step at a time, Hope that helps. Look, it's 8:30 already, 9:30, 10:30, whatever it is for you. Any more questions there? We're done.
There's one more question.
Okay, good. We'll do that.
In regards to natural law, how does it apply to the food chain? If all the killing is due to past karma, what's the true natural law? All animals are naturally vegetarian? ?
No, I mean, what we call natural law in the scientific world is for Buddha this nightmare called samsara. Any beings born as animals or creatures or dogs or rats or fish, it's the result of incredible negative karma. They're living in this hellish nightmare of ignorance and harming and being harmed. It's like a living hell. It's called natural law, but we call it natural law. That's the view we have in the West. And the Buddhist view is a completely nihilistic view. It's a nightmare of suffering. And this is the basis of incredible compassion from the Buddhist point of view. And the wish is to want to become a Buddha so we can stop the suffering. No, the best is not to have any animals at all. Best to have no planet, no universe. Have all become Buddhas, then there's nothing to worry about. But don't hold your breath. It's the basis. It's samsara. It's living in hell, living in suffering. Sentient beings full of ignorance, harming each other and being harmed. I mean, humans are bad enough. Can you imagine the suffering of animals? That's the Buddha's view. It's not how we think of it at all in the West. Okay, dearest people, time to go. Maybe I'll see you again, who knows? Maybe we're on Zoom for the next 10 years, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea when I'm going to move anywhere. I'm sitting in Santa Fe quite happily. I can't imagine where I'm going to be. Can't imagine, maybe in a year's time we're still being Zooming. So who knows? It's a whole new way of relating, isn't it? Let's make the most of it. Thank you, darlings. so much.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank you, Mayor. Your lovely kata. Look at that.
Kata offering.
This is for expansion. Yellow is for increasing and expansion. So may the Dharma increase. May your riches increase so you can benefit others. May your health increase so you can be useful. May your practice increase. May your letting go of attachment and anger and jealousy increase. May your virtue increase. Okay, everybody, never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. Should we do a couple of little prayers that we can join in together?
I'll share my screen here.
Good. Okay, just these two little, this dedication prayer is, where is it? There we go. So it's just due to these, see, look, there it is. Due to these merits of these virtuous actions, meaning all this 2 hours we've been together, as many moments as there have been, is as many seeds we have planted, okay? So we delight in that. It's so rich and delicious. The fact we don't remember doesn't matter. The seeds have gone in. So we think we're going to nourish these seeds with our practice from this second forward, never giving up, so that we can attain the state of a Buddha, so that we can benefit all sentient beings without exception. I mean, what an amazing thought to have. That's incredible. And then may the supreme jewel, this bodhicitta, this amazing aspiration based on compassion and love for all beings, is this aspiration to only want to help others and to never give up, life after life, becoming a Buddha, so that we really can be of benefit to sentient beings. So may that aspiration grow and grow in the hearts of all beings. And may all our holy lamas live long. Anybody who's practicing virtue, may we live long. So, because the world needs us badly to practice virtue, to practice not harming, to practice helping others. May we all have long lives. Okay, that's all. Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, Venerable
See
Robina.
you all somewhere. Thank you, darlings. Much love, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for inviting me. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.